Remember, in the course of discussing movies, the host will spoil plots. You've been warned. Listen to their screams. Greetings, ghouls and creeps, and welcome to Listen to Their Screams, a horror podcast that feels like you're chatting with friends. I am one of your friends, Dave. We're joined, as always, by our other friend, Ike. Ike, how are you?
I'm craving Mexican food.
Yeah, I'm pretty much always craving Mexican food. I can eat Mexican food like anytime. Actually, breakfast food, man. Breakfast food is my thing that I can literally eat anytime. I know this is a sidetrack, right? I know this is not horror related, but I'm gonna be real. I fucking love eggs.
Oh yeah,
man. Eggs are the most amazing thing in the world. I can eat them pretty much any way, well, except for like I don't like the whites runny. So whatever,
right.
Like sunny side up shit like that. Man, I love them boiled. I love them poached. I love them fried. I love them scrambled. Man, eggs are God's gift, if you believe in that thing, to mankind.
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. Because yesterday, I actually, weirdly enough, we're talking about eggs. I ate eggs for every meal yesterday. I had an egg sandwich for breakfast. I had I ate this ramen. It's called buldak. And I make soft boiled eggs with those. And then I ate a breakfast tostada for dinner, so it had egg on it.
Yeah, and we go through so many eggs. We have eggs and toast for lunch all the time. I love it, man. So good. I'm a fiend for it. But yeah, you're right. I know I got it from a side drive, but yeah, Mexican sounds good. But well, in this household tonight, we're having Subway, which is I'm not a huge Subway guy, but it's all right. It's all right.
This actually might be horror related, but I love the tuna sandwich from Subway, and I mean, it might not be tuna; it's maybe meat. So
yeah, who knows? They are making some. They're making some vegetable soup in there to go with the sandwiches. So I guess that's something. But whatever. So Subway's not my first choice of sandwich places to go to, but they have good deals. That's what they reel you in. They say the cheap sandwiches, so you're like,
you're like, how do we not?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hit or miss. I mean, we have one Subway here that's pretty good. So it's my big thing is the Subway. The quality of the bread is so it varies so much from location to location, and that's what makes or breaks a Subway sandwich. Because if you get that crusty ass bread where you take a bite and it's just suddenly you're coated and crust flakes, man, you're living a nightmare. That's horror right there.
It is. Well, something that's not horror. Did you see the Subway came out with footlong cookies?
I did. They're also coming out with footlong churros, which is like it's like they called and said, "Hey, Dave, what do you want us to make?" Because I love fucking churros, and they're not out yet, I don't think, but I'm so excited to try the footlong churros. But this is what happens when you have a horror podcast hosted by a couple of chunky dudes that like food.
Heck yeah.
That unraveled really quick there. But I guess, I don't know, on an related note, I mean, we're talking about Nightmare on 34th Street today. I don't know how we'll tie that into food, but just stand by. Maybe we will. But before we get there, we got a lot of shit to go through. So Ike, before we get to our weekly segment, did you watch anything this week?
I honestly, okay, so I did actually watch some movies, and we talked about one of these before. I watched Gremlins. Yeah, Gremlins is a Christmas rewatch for me. We actually did a whole episode about Gremlins, so you guys will have to check that out, of course. And then I watched a few other Christmas movies. My wife has never seen A Christmas Story, so we sat down and watched A Christmas Story. That's what I'm saying.
Whoa! How has she never? I mean, TBS plays that thing like 24/7 every year.
You're telling me. I was like, because she, for a fun fact about my wife, she used to live in Indiana, as did I, but she didn't always live in Indiana. But I'm like, how do you, as someone who lives in Indiana, not see A Christmas Story? It's literally
it's set in Indiana.
But so yeah, she'd never seen it, so we watched it.
So has she seen it now?
Yeah. We watched it a couple days ago.
And what did she think?
She thought it was good, but it wasn't her favorite.
Oh.
See, here's the thing. For people who don't know, Kayla is a little bit of a I would say that she definitely does not like old movies or like older movies.
Yeah.
So anything made before the year she was born, she tends not to care for a whole lot. So
Yeah, we actually had this conversation because we're discussing concepts for upcoming Wives Rebuttals, which will be coming up soon.
Yeah.
And we were discussing Christmas horror movies, and everyone's, in the associated foursome here, the opinions on them. And my wife, Monica, asked Kayla what was her thoughts on Black Christmas, and she said she's never seen them. And Monica's like, oh, you got to watch them or whatever. Start with the original. And I immediately popped in and said, yeah, she won't like the original.
No. No, that was in the 70s. Like, I mean, if she thought The Exorcist, because she likes The Exorcist, but she doesn't like the pacing, I was like, if she didn't like The Exorcist, she's not going to like Black Christmas. Like,
No.
Oh, man.
Oh, well. Well, I'm not saying that Christmas Story's got to be your favorite, but it's a classic.
It is.
It is a great movie. I absolutely love it. There's so many lines that this time of year I quote from it. I absolutely, Fragile, it will always be one of my classics. It must be important. It says Fragile, or whatever they say. But it's a great movie. So as long as she enjoyed it, maybe it doesn't have to be one of her favorites, but it's a classic Christmas movie. I love it.
Yeah, no, she liked it. Like you said, it just wasn't her favorite. Other than that, though, we actually watched a horror movie I've never seen. It's called Better Watch Out. It came out in 2016. It's a Christmas horror movie. I remember it coming out, but I never watched it. But it was honestly really good. It's an underrated little gem.
I don't think I've ever heard that. I'll have to watch that.
Yeah, it's on Peacock.
Peacock.
Right.
Yeah, because I kind of hit all my top tier Christmas horror movies already. I'm sorry. Were you finished on what you watched?
No, yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to jump the gun there,
No, you're good.
But I did watch the aforementioned Black Christmas from 1974, a favorite of mine. Probably one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time, Christmas horror movies of all time. I watched Silent Night, Deadly Night. That's a great movie. So damn good. Love it. I watched Krampus, which I think it is a great movie. I still think it's underrated. I still don't think it gets the props it deserves for how good it is. And then I watched Rare Exports, which was a foreign subtitled horror movie, which was all right. It was pretty good. It was. I heard a lot of people on Twitter talking about how good it was. I thought it was good, but people are calling it like a classic Christmas horror movie. It was good, but I'm not putting it up there with I'm telling you what, Silent Night, Deadly Night. That's just so good, man. That movie. And maybe it's because the guy works in a toy store and I get to see all the toys from my childhood on the shelves through the movie. Maybe that's what it is for me. But
Right.
but yeah, so I watched a lot of that. So maybe I'll have to check out You Better Watch Out, since I've kind of hit my highlights already. I'll have to check that out. I thought about diving down some Krampus rabbit holes, because there's 50 million of those movies out there. But the 2015 Krampus movie is the pinnacle. That movie is so good. And again, I think it's underrated still. I don't think it gets the props it deserves for being a classic Christmas movie. So good.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Which I think we've discussed on a past episode last year. I think we talked about that, didn't we? I don't remember what episode it was, but I think we talked about Krampus.
We did. It was obviously in December, but I can't remember if it was our second or third episode of December last year. But we did talk about it. We both really liked it. And if you like horror movies and you like Christmas, it should definitely be on your list. Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think we talked about Silent Night, Deadly Night. We may have even talked about Black Christmas. I'm not sure. I think we hit all the big ones last year. The ones that people talk about the most last year. So, but we're digging into actually some new stuff this year, which is kind of exciting. Like we said, this episode we're talking about Nightmare on 34th Street, but we're not quite there yet. Before we get there, we do have our weekly segment.
Stump the Cohost.
And this week, we're going to dive into a Stump the Co-host. This is a segment where Ike and I play a trivia game. We have identical horror trivia decks that we have ordered. We take 2 cards from these decks at random. That is 4 questions in total. And we ask each other these things and try to determine who wins for this episode. As of right now, Ike leads with 4 wins. I have 2 wins, and we have 3 draws. But my 2 wins have come the last 2 times we played trivia in a row. So I'm on a streak. So let's see what happens today. So Ike, are you ready to play Stump the Co-host?
I sure am.
All right. Well, since you're leading, you're in the hot seat. You got to go first. So
Sounds
are
good.
you ready for your first question?
I think I am.
Here we go. Which franchise has the most sequels, The Howling or Tremors?
I'm going to go with the Tremors.
That is incorrect. It is The Howling. That would have been a complete guess by me too. I don't know.
The only thing I know about The Howling is that the second movie, in other countries, is translated into Howling 2, like Shiva, she-bitch, or something like that. So,
she-bitch?
Yeah, I shit you not.
Well,
that is not what it's called here, but
at least it's not The Howling 2 Electric Boogaloo. But,
it would have been better.
Yeah, I guess. I love Breakin'. I love the movie Breakin', but yeah, all the heat that Breakin' 2 gets, it's deserved. Now, mind you, Breakin' is a sweet little slice of 80s pop culture. And if you don't get it, well, you're just not going to like that movie. But anyway, go ahead and give me my first question. You've missed, so I've got the ability to go on the offensive here. So let's see what we got.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty confident you'll get this first one.
Man, I'm telling you all the time, quit saying that. Man, you put the pressure on me, and I look like a fool if I don't get it.
Nah, you'll get it.
We'll see.
Yeah, what director of The Omen went on to direct the 1978 film Superman?
Richard Donner.
Yep, that's right.
To be fair, I wouldn't have known that from The Omen. I knew that from Superman.
I did not know he did The Omen.
I did not either, actually. To be completely honest, I guess I should have known that since we host a horror podcast. The Omen's not one of those movies that I've watched a whole lot in my life. Maybe it's due for a rewatch. But the 1978 Superman is one that I have seen a million times and a movie that I love. So, thank you for that gift.
That's right.
All right, here's your second question. This 1958 film takes place in a Swiss resort town where a mysterious radioactive cloud appears to be the cause of a series of decapitations. Wow.
I'm going to guess it's either The Mist or The Fog. I feel confident about that. I feel like that has to be what it is. So I'm going to say The Fog.
That is incorrect. It is The Crawling Eye, a.k.a. the Trollenberg Terror.
What the actual fuck?
No idea. 1958 even predates me. And for my love of some classic horror way back, I love the Universal monsters. I love Hammer horror. I don't know what the fuck that is.
Yeah, I've never ever seen that. I guess I was thinking, because I know that The Fog is like an 80s movie, so I was like really hoping that there was like a remake. That was a remake of that.
No such luck. So
Nope.
So here we go. I got a chance to really put the nails to you. So let's go for it. Here we go.
Yep. All right. Set in the year 2455, where does the film Jason X take place?
Outer space.
That is correct.
Oh, don't get me started about Jason X.
Yes, indeed. Jason X is a little slice of 2000s that should not have been made.
Oh, do not like that movie.
Negative, Ghost Rider.
No, and I like science fiction and I like horror, but for some reason, you mix them up in that concept, it just didn't work for me. But,
no, science fiction slashers can work, but not Jason X.
No, it just didn't. I applaud him for swinging for the fences, but I think I was more of a swing and miss there.
I think it was.
Whew. But goddamn, what is it? Why you're getting all these questions? Which franchise has the most sequels, Hellraiser or Friday the 13th?
Friday the 13th.
That is correct.
I felt pretty confident about that one. I was like, I'm pretty sure I can count Hellraiser on my fingers. Friday the 13th, I don't think I can.
That's so weird that you got two questions like that, though.
They were definitely testing me this week.
All right. Well, you're staying in the hunt at least for a draw here. So all I need is one more. If I can get one more right, I've got another win and 3 in a row, and I'm that's putting me up there almost even with you. So bring it on. What's my third question?
All right, number 3. What 2005 movie contains both elements of the supernatural and a courtroom drama?
What? Well, I don't. 2005 is not exactly my wheelhouse year for horror. Jeez Louise. I don't know. I'm going to say I Know What You Did Last Summer. And that's completely wrong.
That is not right. It is The Exorcism of Emily Rose. The Exorcism
yeah. Shit.
Yeah, for people who might be confused by that statement, The Exorcism of Emily Rose follows someone who is receiving an exorcism, but also sort of the legal issue kind of around it. So that's what that means for people who've not seen the movie.
I feel like a dope. I should have known that.
Honestly, based on that description, I would not have gotten it. I'm gonna be real with you.
Yeah, that was damn it. All right, here's your last question. If you get this right, you have tied me, and puts the pressure on me to get my fourth question. If you miss, I've automatically won this week. So here we go. What 1981 film is about a group of teenage friends trapped in a carnival funhouse with a freakish maniac?
Carnival Funhouse. What year was it?
1981.
1981. Oh my god. Well, I know there's a movie called Maniac, but that's in, I think that takes place in New York, not a carnival. The Burning is from around that time, but that's a camp. That's like a camp type deal. A carnival. What movie? It's not The Town that. No, that's not right. It's not like. Well, shit.
Well, shit.
Yeah, man. I'm trying to think. I'm sure I've heard of it. I don't know. Carnival.
No, it is called The Funhouse.
Yeah, that I definitely would not have gotten that one.
Woo! So I have won again. But go ahead, give me that fourth question. Let's see if I can get it.
Yep. All right. What 2008 French horror movie involved the flaying of the main character in order to allow her to reach a state of transcendence?
I don't. No idea. I don't know. No idea. What is that?
It is a film called Martyrs.
Not familiar with that.
No, I've never personally seen Martyrs. I have heard of it. I've actually heard a lot of people say that this is one of those movies that you watch one time and you never watch it again.
Well, I've not watched it one time yet.
So you're like, I've not given it my one watch. So, but yeah, I've heard it's good, so I'll have to check it out. But yeah, it is called Martyrs.
All right. Well, there you go with a meager 2-1 win. I have won my third in a row. That brings Ike's. That cuts into Ike's lead with 4 wins for him, 3 wins for me, and 3 draws. So we're getting to that point of it's a whole new ball game, and yeah, that's exciting. We're almost to the end of the year here, so we have to make sure we squeeze in one more before the end of the year to see if I can tie, and let's see what we do. But this has got interesting.
I was gonna say we're coming down to the wire too for it.
Yeah, after a dismal beginning for me, this is getting intriguing now. So All right. Well, there you have it. That's our weekly segment, Stump the Co-Host. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have all of our news and anniversaries, so stick around.
Make sure you subscribe to listen to their screams on your favorite podcast platform. Also, make sure you look us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, TikTok, and Slasher. All you have to do is look up Listen to Screams. That is Listen, the number 2 in Screams, and you can find us there. Also, make sure you go and buy yourself a Listen to Their Screams t-shirt. You can find all of our shirts at tinyurl.com Screams Shirts.
Spread the news. Spread the news. Spread the news. And we're back with the news. All right. So, starting us off strong, we didn't have any news this week. Slow news week, if you will. Although I will say, I don't know if we talked about it on a previous episode, but reportedly, Jenna Ortega is also off of the new Scream project. I know we mentioned Melissa Barrera, but I don't think that we have actually talked about Ortega.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not. I'm not sure, but yeah, they're. And it's so weird. All this Scream stuff is really odd to me because the Ortega stuff. There's talks that her leaving this project even predates the stuff with Barrera. That they had reduced her role down. That Barrera was the primary, Sam was the primary in this next movie, and that Ortega said, no thanks. And so I don't know. Who knows what to believe here? There's been no official statements on what happened. Maybe there will never be. I don't know. The whole thing's kind of a mess.
Yeah,
and,
it's strange.
Yeah, it's very peculiar. We weren't exactly blown away by the last Scream movie, right? It was okay. Wasn't bad, but this is not good, right? I mean, for coming to a movie that they really needed to put everything out there, right, and really come in strong. This is not good. And I think we discussed a little bit what hey, you know what they need? I don't know whether we discussed this or whether it was just you and I texting. Yeah, they can. I mean, do I think they can say Scream? Sure. Yeah. What do you have to do to really bring this ship back afloat? Well, number one, you got to get Neve Campbell back on board, right? Yeah. If you don't have these two, you got to have Neve Campbell. If you don't have Neve Campbell, just cancel. Yeah. Right? There's no offense to Courtney Cox. She can't carry it alone. Scream has always been an ensemble movie. It has always had, multiple strong characters. If you don't get Neve Campbell back in the fold, and you really, honest to God, you really need to get Patrick Dempsey as well as Neve Campbell's on-screen husband in this. That would even strengthen it more. If you don't get them, fuck it. Just forget it. It's not going to work. Yeah. But if you really want to save this motherfucker, we need Matthew Lillard brought back into the Scream franchise. It gets talked about every time a new Scream movie comes out. There's rumors, there's innuendos, there's all these things. You and I talked about it with the last movie. We thought, oh yeah, this will be it. You got to pull the trigger now. I don't care what you got to do. Throw the money at the man or whatever. I think he's down for it, but you got to make it work. You got to bring Stu back because, Neve Campbell is great. She's it, and will be whatever else. If you have Stu come back to this franchise, people are going to forget this shit. They're going to be so happy about that character and Matthew Lillard being back. The sting from these two leaving will be greatly lessened in my eyes. It would be for me. I hate to see these two go, but if you've got the classic characters, if you've got Neve back and you bring Stu back, I'm okay because I prefer, honestly, no offense to these two, I prefer those characters anyway.
Yeah. I think that you could very easily create an ensemble with legacy characters, and it would be very easy. I mean, you could bring back Neve Campbell, you can bring back Patrick Dempsey. I mean, Patrick Dempsey is kind of riding a high right now with Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was so good in that movie. So, I mean, you could easily pull him into the fold. You could very easily get Matthew Lillard on board. I mean, he talks at conventions all the time that he would be so down to reprise his role as Stu Macher if it was done right. He literally talks about it. And he did so fucking good in Five Nights at Freddy's as William Afton. Like, he blew me away. So he's having a career renaissance right now. This is the time for them to bring Stu Macher back. This is the time to really, it's a 1-2 punch. Bring him back. And there's so many ways they could do this. Bring back the legacy characters. Heather Matarazzo, who plays, I can't remember his name now. The sister of the guy who like did all the movies.
Yeah, Randy.
You could bring her back, and by bringing her back, you obviously bring in to the fold the two characters, the brother-sister characters.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could very easily create an ensemble with the legacy cast, bring Stu Macher back, kill off a couple of people, and you have yourself a box office hit. Easy.
Yeah, the thing is, here's the thing. Is this a big hit? Yeah, it's a big hit, right? Because I'm sure whatever they envisioned or wanted to do, ideally, has it altered now? Of course, right? But hey, whatever. If they just take a breath, gain their composure, and here's the key, right? You can bring back Neve Campbell, you can bring back Matthew Lillard, you can bring back whatever. But you have to have a sound explanation why suddenly these two characters are not discussed anymore.
Yeah.
And if you can come up with something like that, and just don't pretend it doesn't happen, I think you can pull it off. It's obviously been the big talk online about what's going on here. We'll probably never know the full story, right? And that's fine. Because they don't owe us an explanation for everything, right? This is personal business dealings. They don't necessarily have to spell it all out to us, and that's fine. But the deal is this: I hear all this shit about boycott. Come on, what the hell? I mean, if you're so caught up in these two characters that you're going to boycott the franchise, then I mean, are you really a longtime fan? Right, I understand. Here again, but my thing is this: my leanings are towards the original Scream characters, the earlier Scream movies. So if they switch back and bring in Stu, if they bring in back Neve Campbell, which by the fucking way, Neve Campbell should have never not been paid and put in these movies. So the fact that she wasn't in the last one is a fucking travesty all on its own, and I'm not going to dive into that, but. Pay her what she's fucking worth. She is this franchise. I don't care. I love Jenna Ortega. I love Barrera. I love all this, right? I love them. But Neve Campbell is the face of this franchise. She always has been. She is the one that this thing started with. It's sitting around, and you can bring it back to her. Just do it right? Don't fucking rush to put some shit out. Fucking sit down. Fucking come up with a logical, fresh explanation for what is happening here. And you can do it, right? Because Neve Campbell, wherever she is with her husband, right? Let's take Ghostface there, right? And or whatever. Just do it right. Don't pretend this shit didn't happen.
Right.
And be respectful of your fans. It's not the end of the world, right? Franchises, TV and movies or whatever have endured recasts and overhauls and characters leaving, and some of them have excelled afterwards. This could be too if you do it right. I don't know. I guess I'm in the weird position that while so many people are like, "Oh, this sucks," I'm like, "Hey, it sucks," but I like these two, but they're not what I think of when I think of Scream. And while while they'll be missed, if we get a little closure to some of those early movies and we get Neve Campbell and some of those guys back, I prefer that. So I'm in a peculiar position. I know I'm the old guy. Just do it right. I mean, I know we sidetracked and talked a lot about this, but, man, people are like knee-jerk react so quickly to this stuff. And it's like, it's like take a breath and let's just wait and see what happens here, right? It is what it is. Let's see how the studio reacts, and let's see, and maybe it'll be okay. Maybe they'll make chicken salad on chicken shit. Who knows? And let's just see before we start, screaming about boycotts and shit. Okay, if you don't want to see the movie, don't see the movie. Just don't see it. Whatever. I don't care. It's a Scream movie. I'm going to go see it. I don't give a shit who's in it. I will probably go see it when it opens up. Whether I enjoy it or not. Hey, when that time comes, we'll talk about it on here. But hey, let's don't judge before we even know what the hell's happening. So.
Very true. Very true. But before we get too far down that rabbit hole, let's move on to some birthdays and movie anniversaries coming up. Mm-hmm. Starting us off somewhat strong, I guess, depending on how you think about it. December 8th, 1966. Tyler Mane from the Michael Myers and the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. We talked about it a lot. Not a fan of Rob Zombie's Halloween, but I can say this. The guy who plays Michael Myers is a beast. He looks great as Michael Myers. So Tyler Mane is, if anything, a very, very bright, shining glimmer within a very dark, very shitty movie. So I give him that.
Yeah, I like Tyler Mane. He was also in some of the X-Men movies. I think he played. Yeah. Did he play Sabretooth? Maybe I can't remember.
I think so. I think you're right.
So I like Tyler Mane. I have no qualms with Tyler Mane. But not a fan of the Michael Myers, the Halloween, Rob Zombie Halloweens, whatever I'm trying to say. But I do like Tyler Mane. I'm not going to judge him for these movies, but he did all right, and I like Tyler Mane. So whatever. Happy birthday, dude.
There you go. And then, of course, we have December 9th, 1902, Margaret Hamilton, the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz. We talked about this quite a bit, but The Wizard of Oz, in the context of the time in which it was released, is most likely, a very scary horror movie. Mm-hmm. So, it's a great movie. Margaret Hamilton did fantastic. And honestly, I mean, she's a real trooper. I mean, if I remember hearing correctly, didn't she get badly burned by one of the effects and just kind of truck her through it?
Yeah, she was great. And here's the thing: when you're listening to our podcast, within the realm of listening to their screams, The Wizard of Oz is a horror movie. I don't give a shit what anybody else says. When you're in our world right now, and it is a horror movie because in that context of the whenever it was scary. I know this because as a child, I watched this thing every year on TV, and Flying Monkeys and the Wicked Witch scared me. So it was comparable to me to the Universal monster movies. It's not that different. Margaret Hamilton was probably the brightest spot of that movie. And I'm not knocking anybody in it, but she was incredible. She was so into it. And the thing I love about her so much is outside this realm, she owned so much what she was doing that she realized that her role could scare people. She actually went on Mr. Rogers one time to show kids her dressing up as the Wicked Witch, and that it was her acting, just to rest the fears of kids like me, who were worried and scared by this Wicked Witch. She was incredible. Say what you want. Again, within our world, within our universe here, The Wizard of Oz is a horror movie.
Yep, absolutely. Beyond that, of course, we also have another very famous lady, I would say. We have December 11th, 1922, Vampira, horror hostess. Vampira is a little bit before my time, but I know that Vampira is very important to the early 70s, 80s, that genre of horror movie fans. So, very good.
Yeah, Vampira blazed the path for multiple reasons. Number one, I love Elvira. Don't get me wrong. I love Elvira. Elvira's look was pretty much lifted from Vampira. Yeah, it is what it is. And Vampira was doing this in a time when it wasn't easy for women to do these things. And she was doing them. And Vampira blazed the path for horror hosts and horror hostesses, and a classic character. I mean, she's got Toonie Terror's figures. She's got other figures. It's an iconic character. And for those, I know, Svengooli's still out there. Horror hosts were a big thing when I was a kid. And while Vampira was not obviously still doing it when I was a kid, she laid the path, the foundation for some of the people that I grew up watching and some of the other horror hosts. Everybody had everywhere in the country, they had horror hosts. And they can all thank Vampira for getting this shit started.
That's right. That's very right. Honestly, I think if I remember correctly, it was Sammy Terry from Lower Indiana. So I mean, that's who I kind of remember when I was really young. I remember he would, because I'm from, I've talked about this before, but I'm from a little town called Columbus, Indiana. And downtown Columbus, Indiana, there used to be a store or something like that he would go to. And I remember when I was a really young kid, probably like 5, I have a very distinct memory of seeing him, and it scared the shit out of me. So
yeah. I mean, I grew up with Sammy Terry as well. He was every week. Sammy Terry was there presenting the monster movie. Was scary as shit. He was scarier than the movies themselves. And I saw him at several different appearances at parades and different things when I was a kid. And man, he was always scary. And his son is carrying on, still doing Sammy Terry. Now it's online. Still hosting movies, still doing things, still making appearances. But again, everywhere, everybody had their regional horror host, right? That did these things, and Sammy Terry was a Midwest icon. But I mean, again, a lot of these people owe a debt to people like Vampira and some of those people.
Absolutely. All right, so those are some pretty cool birthdays. Now we have some anniversaries. So we actually are celebrating the 1-year anniversary of The Mean One, starring David Howard Thornton of Terrifier fame. That was released December 9th, 2022. And we are going to be reviewing this not on our next episode, but the following episode for December 21st. So very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah, The Mean One is something I wanted to watch last year. But it's one of those small release movies that it was difficult with the availability and whatnot. We couldn't really pull anything last year, but it's out there now, right? It's available video on demand, and we'll be reviewing it. And I'm excited, right? I love the Grinch. I love David Howard Thornton, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see this, right? What they do with this, because again, the Grinch is a little creepy, a little spooky. It's not that far a leap to make it a horror movie. So I'm excited. I can't wait to watch this and review it here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, me too. Very excited. And then we also have December the 9th, 1983. We have Christine, based on a Stephen King novel and directed by John Carpenter. I've seen Christine. It's a good one. It's a little bit of a different take on sort of like, enemies or antagonists in a film, Not often do you have an inanimate object as the antagonist, but it's very good. And also, Dave had a van at some point that was nicknamed Christine.
Yeah, I did. That's true. Christine, I believe, I don't know, I think we did a top 3 about Stephen King. Christine's my favorite Stephen King movie. Love it. Everything about it. And yes, you're right. I had a minivan that was a piece of work. Had lots of issues, lots of problems, but just kept on trucking. So therefore, we dubbed it Christine because it seemingly could not be killed. And there you go. But I love Christine. You always hear these rumblings about it getting remade. Man, I hope they don't, because I love the original so much. Yeah,
absolutely. And then we also have December 12th, 1941, The Wolfman, a Universal movie starring Lon Chaney Jr. The Wolfman, obviously, it's part of that Universal Monsters and all that. Again, I don't think I've actually seen The Wolfman. I think I've seen clips from it, though. But yeah, I mean, it is legendary in its own right, and definitely it's a very important anniversary for all horror movies.
It is. The Wolfman's a great movie. Lon Chaney Jr. is great. Lon Chaney Jr. is noted for he played the Wolfman, he played Frankenstein, he played Dracula, in the Mummy, and different Universal sequels. So he played more roles, different roles than anybody. Of course, Lon Chaney Jr., the son of Lon Chaney, who was the man of whatever they called him, man of 1,000 faces. Lon Chaney established so much with makeup and prosthetics and all these things, right? Creating these characters. He was in early movies, and was spectacular. And Lon Chaney Jr. following his footsteps, carried on a lot. And Lon Chaney Jr. though he had some demons with the drink and everything else that ended up getting him the best of him. But anyway, The Wolfman is a great Universal movie. It's an iconic movie. It's probably one of the ones that if you're going to have a casual fan watch a Universal movie, it's one that's really easy to watch for someone who's not into that old Universal horror. It's really a great movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Have to check it out. Like I said, seen clips, but I need to check out all those Universal movies for sure. All right. December 12th, 1997, Scream 2. We've actually ranked all the Scream films, talked about them at extensive lengths. Scream 2 is a fantastic movie, a worthy sequel, and has a lot of positives for the Scream franchise. I know we both love this movie.
Yeah, I do. I like it. We've talked about it. It's a great sequel. It's a good 1-2 punch with the first one. It's a great movie. While we talked a little bit earlier about, I guess more than a little bit, about the Scream franchise current. It's nice to kind of look back and remember the good days.
Yeah, absolutely. Good old Scream. All right, and then last, but certainly not least, I've actually seen this version of this movie. Weirdly enough, December 13th, 2019, Black Christmas. So for people who are like, what do you mean Black Christmas 2019? What are you talking about? So Black Christmas was originally released in 1974. There was a remake in 2006, and then there was an additional remake in 2019. I've seen the 2019 remake, and I've seen the original from 1974, because I believe, like you said, we watched it last year.
Yeah.
But I've not seen the one in the middle, so I've not seen the 2006 version. But as a little slice of 2000s nostalgia for you, it is headed up by Michelle Trachtenberg and Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who are both, like, I would say 2000s icons for female actors.
Yeah. Ironically, I don't think I've seen either of the remakes. And
Really?
Monica gives me grief. She likes the 2006 one because it's got Katie Cassidy in it and some other people. She really likes Katie Cassidy, and I do too as well. But I don't know. I love the original so much. It's like I don't know. I have a little trepidation about watching a remake. And it's been remade twice. I just say, hey, that's just a sign of how good the original was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's definitely an indication that at the very minimum, the studio thought that this was a good enough idea to try and remake it twice. At the very minimum. Yeah. I love it. All right. Now, I think that pretty much does it for anniversaries and birthdays. And we just have a little bit of information on an upcoming release. But on December the 8th, we have the Sacrifice Game coming to Shudder. Coming to a theater near you. No, I'm just kidding. Coming to Shudder. It is described as, it's bad enough that boarding school students Samantha and Clara can't go home for the holidays. But things take a deadly turn when a murderous gang arrives on their doorstep, just in time for Christmas. Love a good, intruder movie. I love a good, those are very good horror movies because they're very realistic. So I love those. So I'm very excited for this one, and it's Christmas related, so I'm sure there'll be some fun stuff relating to that.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Again, I'm always looking for. I love Christmas horror movies, so I'm always looking for something new to watch. Besides the classics, besides the big ones, and we'll see what this is. It's something new. Shudder usually comes through for us with some quality releases, so we'll find out what this one's like December 8th. I'm sure you and I will probably both watch it. We'll probably both speak of it on a future episode. While we won't do a full review, I'm sure we'll mention it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's usually how it goes. We usually at least mention some of these movies because, it comes up in our watches and whatnot. But in any case, I say it once, say it a million times. I'll probably say it a million times more. If you don't follow us on social media, you're a loser. Follow us. We talk about all these things. We post about them. We give you guys up-to-date, information. If we hear anything different or any news, we try and give it to you when it happens. And then on our weekly episode, we do a recap. So definitely check us out there. We're on every social media platform you can think of. Probably too many, but that's okay.
Yep.
And when we come back, we're going to give you our official review of A Nightmare on 34th Street. Stick around.
Listen to Their Screams is now a Fangoria collaborator. Get 20% off your order at shop.fangoria.com by using the promo code LISTEN2SCREAMS at checkout. That is listen, the number 2, and screams. Or you can click the link in the show notes.
All right, and welcome back to Listen to Their Screams. It is review time, and we are reviewing Nightmare on 34th Street. Of course, that's a play on Miracle on 34th Street, the classic Christmas movie. But this is not a miracle. This is a nightmare. And it is written and directed by James Crow. It is now available digitally out there, wherever your favorite platform is for this. And the movie is described as a mysterious and psychopathic Santa visits a small rural town with a bag full of unusual gifts and twisted holiday stories featuring Krampus, a murderous Saint Nick, and killer carol singers that are certain to ruin the Christmas season forever. Now that we've got that, gloves are off here. Dave's gonna rant because if we're gonna talk about ruining the Christmas season, I did not like this movie. I really didn't. It had things I liked, but number one, let's get to my first gripe about this movie. It was too damn long. This movie did not need to be this long. Okay, let's talk about this movie, right? This movie had like kind of 6 type segments here, right? So Ike, let's talk about these individually, these segments, because I think that's the best way. Because I like some of the segments, it did not like some of the others. The first segment was Toby and Chloe's Christmas Nightmare, which had 3 killers that invaded, blah, 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 blah. And then it skipped to 5 years later. The 2 children that they took were part of the little group and everything else. I like this segment. I thought this segment was fun. I thought it was creepy as hell. The girl that they took that later was part of their group, I thought this was really neat. It was really, I don't know, I liked it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was well done. It was creepy. It had all the elements, right length. Everything hit me just right on this one. Ike, what'd you think of the Toby and Chloe's, the first segment in this?
Yeah, I will say I felt it was a little cheesy, but as an opener, it was interesting. Like I said, some of the effects were a little low quality, but at the same time, this is a independent film, so I give them a lot of grace with that. So the first segment, it was very quick, very snappy, had some very good little quips to it. The actor that played the Man in Red or something like that is what they called him.
Yeah.
I thought he was kind of funny, like how he talked and stuff. So I enjoyed that first little bit. It was a good introduction to it. And it definitely set the tone for the movie that, hey, we're going to get creative. We're going to do some fun stuff here. But yeah, I enjoyed that first little segment. It was a good little bite into it, and then boom, we were ready to go.
Yeah, I agree. I saw this, I thought, okay, hey, this is fun so far. And then it went to kind of what ended up being kind of the wraparound of this whole thing, right? There was a segment that they dubbed Santa's Story, and it was essentially a Santa talking to a kid, telling him stories, telling him, this and that, talking about the 3 killers. This was kind of tying everything together. I thought it was fine. I thought it worked. I thought it was establishing something to pull everything together, right? When you have a segment type movie, you need this kind of stuff, something that kind of glues everything together, that's woven in there. The segment was fine. Wasn't really anything creepy. I mean, it was creepy, but it wasn't anything in there scary per se. It was there to more be kind of that glue, right? That mortar between the bricks that we're establishing. This is how these segments go together. So it was okay. Right, it didn't rock my world, but it was fine for what it was, the purpose it served. What'd you think, Ike?
Yeah, the overarching story. Honestly, I felt like the payoff wasn't quite as good as I thought it was going to be. Obviously, we'll get to that at the end here in a little bit. But the in between stuff wasn't too bad. I do like the concept of how they were relaying it. It was supposed to be, because you kind of think okay, this has got a guy dressed up as Santa, telling kids to a story in bed. So I liked the delivery. I think that the method in which that these stories were delivered was interesting. We'll talk about, I guess, the ending of that sort of overarching story later, because I think it's like the last little bit. But I think that the delivery method was actually pretty nice. I was like, you know what, I can dig that. I can dig that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was okay. Again, I think, maybe it lost a little step from the first segment, but again, you do get the feeling, right? This is the wraparound. This is supposed to be the glue holding it all together. There's a little leeway there, so I get that. Then came the third segment, the ventriloquist who stole Christmas. Man, I'm just gonna say flat, this fucking thing sucked. This, number one, this thing was so god dang long. It drug. I just did not feel this segment at all. I think they could have completely taken this out, been just fine. I don't think this thing brought anything to the movie. Don't think it established anything. I thought it was creepy, right? I get it, but I just don't. I don't know. They something needed to be done there to try to hold my interest, because man, this thing was so long that by the time they got to any of the meat of the matter, I just didn't care anymore. What'd you think of the ventriloquist segment, Ike?
I don't think that it was horrible. I do think it was long. I think that they could have cut about 50% of this and it would have been a lot better. I think a lot of the in-between bullshit didn't make any sense. I think that they were trying too hard with this segment, because here's the deal. I think the concept's great. You know, the sort of overarching concept is that this guy is a puppeteer. He has some trauma. He has loss after loss of, losing his gig, losing his partner, everything else, and it just kind of drives him mad. And I don't mind that. I think that that's a good, interesting story on paper, but how it was executed was just long-winded. I think that they could have, like I said, cut about 30 minutes of that, and I don't think it was actually longer than 30 minutes, but it just felt long. It felt like it dragged. I felt like I was wearing an anchor. I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah, it was so much longer than the other segments.
Yeah.
While maybe the whole gist of the thing was fine. Like I said, by the time they got to the heart of the matter, I didn't care anymore. They'd already lost me. I mean, they went into this thing with I don't know what was his girlfriend, his wife. I thought it was his daughter at first, but it was just everything was so weird. And then it was just like all this unnecessary stuff. I get, right? They're establishing how down on the look this guy is. But man, I don't think we needed that many examples. I think they could have taken a little away. Kept the focus on the guy's father and what happened there, because the end game was okay, but they had all this other stuff in there. I'm like, I don't know if this really adds to it per se. I think we got the vibe that this guy was kind of fucked in the head and had some issues. I don't think they needed to double down with some of the stuff that was just all it was doing was adding time. But it just drug on and on and on. Now the next segment was called, I think they called Merry Krampus. Again, it was okay. It wasn't bad. I don't know. It didn't really hook me that much. The Krampus was a little weird, but he was kind of funny. It was okay. I think given the innate amount of Krampus stuff we have out there, I don't know that this brought anything so unearthly, so new to the game that it was necessary. But it was okay. Coming out of the ventriloquist, it didn't seem near as bad, I don't think. I don't know. It didn't really. I could take it or leave it. What do you think, Ike?
Honestly, I like the Krampus one. I think that maybe I just like the concept of Krampus, maybe, but I really enjoyed Krampus. Like the little segment here, I kind of like that they made it twist to the point where was it actually Krampus or was the person mentally ill? The Santa narrator kind of talks about that a little bit. But I quite enjoyed the Krampus segment. I thought that it was, quick and easy, quick and simple. They, like I said, they didn't try and draw it out. It was nowhere near as bad as the puppet segment.
Yeah.
It was very quick and snappy. It had a very clear motive from the beginning. They have laid down the groundwork, and they pounded out, I would say, a pretty good, solid little snippet. And yeah, I quite enjoyed this Krampus segment. I would say that was probably one of the ones that I enjoyed more than some of the other ones for sure.
Yeah. It was. I mean, it was okay. We went to a segment that was called the 12 Kills of Christmas. Now, man, this one, this was some dark stuff here.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about a priest who they're obviously insinuating had some inappropriate relations with members of the boys choir that led to some murder, some burying alive, some different things. Then this guy ended up having whatever mental condition, dementia, or whatever. I can't remember what it was, where he was in this state of seemingly not being able to respond, and his daughter was taking care of him, but he was coming out of it like he was trying to kind of own up and reveal some of this. And it was, and then there was these members of the choir coming back to kind of seek vengeance. They were calling themselves the fallen angels. This, this was probably the most twisted, dark segment of this. I thought it was all right. It was pretty good, but it did have, there was a lot of stuff that kind of made you a little uncomfortable. That's not necessarily bad per se, but it definitely kind of made you cringe at some of the content. I thought it was all right though, and it definitely kind of spooked me a little bit. What'd you think, Ike?
Yeah, like I said, I don't think this was my favorite segment, but it was actually decent. Like I said, it definitely went to a pretty dark place, but it told a very interesting story. It was a cohesive story, and I honestly I did not anticipate the little twist at the end where the priest was actually cognizant the whole time, basically.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that, and then when it happened, you're just like, oh, okay, well, that just happened. So yeah, I would say that it was good. It was decent. It had a good, solid story, and the payoff was actually good. One of the things that I didn't really care about the Krampus one is that I feel like the payoff of the Krampus part was a little lackluster to an extent, because I felt like they just kind of like really quickly shut it off. But I felt like the payoff of this one was a little bit more because I felt like they really had some good details to finish it off. But like you said, this one was dark. This one was really dark.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was good. And some of the scenery too, because there was like some dream sequences too, were actually really cool. They were very unique, and I don't know, it definitely shocked me how well this segment was laid out.
Yeah, it was, again, it was all right. I enjoyed it. I don't think it overdid or whatever. It was very dark, but it was very creepy. And then they bring it all home with what a segment they call Santa's Revenge, which hooks back around to the Santa guy that's telling the story, and that's kind of the wraparound guy, right? Talking about him, basically, that he was whatever a whatever you want to call him, a mall Santa or whatever you want to call him, that lost his job, lost his wife, was going to lose his son, but he ended up killing his wife and son. Kind of gave us a little of his backstory. Again, this was pretty dark, pretty creepy, but it kind of establishes why, this guy that's telling these stories through the whole thing is pretty screwed to the head. And it was all right kind of for bringing it home. I don't know that it really kind of put that final nail in to really hit us hard to finish up. But it was okay. But again, it kind of felt, if you're going to bring all this together and finish the movie out and seal the deal, it kind of felt a little lukewarm for a final segment. I don't know. It just didn't. There was no, none of that shock at all that maybe you kind of hope for these kind of movies in that final bit. What'd you think, Ike?
Yeah, I think that the overarching story, it had sort of like that. What I would say that it was a little rushed, because what happened? Because what they did was they basically had to tell like this story super quick, because basically I felt like, I mean, I'll save my comment for what I want to say here in just a second, but basically they had to tell the story pretty quick, and I felt like it wasn't horrible. It was an interesting take on the sort of, narrator role. The narrator is telling all these sort of like messed up stories because he in some way, shape, or form was attached to each of them. He kind of saw them or knew about them from news stories or whatever the case may be. And obviously he's not really Santa. He is just like a mall Santa who, again, lost his job and went on a tirade. So yeah, I didn't hate it, but at the same time, I felt like it was very rushed. I felt like if they took some time away from some of the other lesser segments and kind of added it to this one, I felt like it could have been a little more solid. But I definitely felt like a lot of the kills and the lead up to this sort of murderous Santa was a little rushed.
Yeah, and now I will say with this movie, because I did a little bit of digging. This movie apparently was on the table for quite a long time, right? It was talked about being made for a long time, and I don't know what happened, right? It went through all these processes and all this and that. I do know, right? We had a screener link for this before it came out. I will say there was a screener link sent to us.
Mm-hmm.
And then shortly after, there was a revised screener link. We're saying, oh, they've changed the movie. Here it is. I don't know what changes they made. I don't know if they added content. I don't know. So this movie has been very fluid. It feels like up to the point of being released digitally. So I don't know if maybe that leans towards some of this. It's a little kind of all over the place. It doesn't really kind of all come together as cohesive. I don't know if they added stuff into that ventriloquist thing because it was in the context of all this, it was such a long segment compared to the others. I don't know if they really just thought that was going to be the heart of the matter. I don't get that, but it's their movie. So I don't know. It seems like this movie seemed like it had a lot going on right up to the point of release. And I don't know why. I don't know if creatively they just lots of stuff they wanted to put. I don't know, right? I don't have an explanation. But
Yeah.
I will say that all that you kind of feel in the finished product, right? It feels while it has some bright spots, it has some not so bright spots. And we broke this down by segment. But if you look at it from beginning to end, it does kind of lack a little bit of cohesiveness.
Yeah.
Right. And what I like about movies that have segments like this is that ability to kind of bring it all together, which is usually done at the end and in that last segment. And the best ones are the ones that pull stuff that maybe you didn't get from watching these segments and puts it all together in this unique way at the end that ties into the wraparound story. And really makes you say, oh, yeah, okay. That makes while you're watching it, you're like, what is this? What is this? What does this have to do with it? And it has that ability to put it all together and make you say, got it. I get it now. Well done. I think this missed. While there's some segments that are fun, there's parts of this that are fun. If you take it as a whole, I don't know what it exactly is. I see what they tried to do. I don't think they stuck the landing quite fully on this. And it didn't feel cohesive as much as we have a bunch of ideas. How can we force it to try to make it work? Because I really want to get this into my movie. And I don't know. Again, we've talked about segment movies where it's like you have an ideal that maybe is not quite fleshed out enough to make a whole movie. So you want to do it this way, but there's got to be a balance. It's got to work. Overall, while this movie has some good stuff, I don't feel as a whole, as a movie, I don't know. I don't think it clicked. I don't quite think the foundation's solid there to give us a cohesive movie. What do you think, Ike?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, as a whole, I think my first comment needs to be this movie was way too motherfucking long.
Yeah,
way too long.
No doubt. I mean, this thing was over 2 hours long.
Well, I pulled it up because just as a fun fact, a lot of times, when people send us screener links, they're hosted through sites and you have to enter a password.
Yep.
So I go to the site, enter in the password, and it tells you like the movie, it shows you like a title card, and then it shows you how long it is, and then you hit play and it starts. And I saw it said 2 hours. I'm like, surely that's got to be a fucking mistake.
Yep.
Surely that's a mistake.
That's what I thought too.
And
so no way.
Well, I'm just thinking to myself, like, I've watched like major blockbuster movies that struggle to make it 2 hours, and I'm like, how in God's green earth are they going to make this last 2 hours?
Yep.
And so, I mean, and obviously, I don't mean this in any way, shape, or form like truly negative towards like the creators, because I understand the creators probably had a vision in mind and they set out to make what they envisioned, and I truly respect that. But on the other hand, this movie was too fucking long, bro.
It was.
40 minutes too long, probably. 50
absolutely.
Minutes long.
and what we've talked about before, if you're going to do a 2 hour movie, you better be damn sure of that content. Yeah. Because you've got to give us 2 hours of good shit. We have said this time and time again. No offense, but a director has to know when to be able to say, hey, that's all right. It's just not working for the movie. Even if it's good, okay. Even if the material is okay, if it doesn't fit in the movie, you got to be able to know when to say no. We got to cut that because it's what's best for the movie as a whole. I don't care how much you like that segment. I don't care how tied you are to it. A good director has to be able to manage his time to know what is working for the movie as a whole. If you're talking about a segment, a segment movie like this or whatever you want to call it, it's especially true. They could have cut so much of that ventriloquist part to cut this movie down. It really, there was so much in this. I don't care if they thought that was the best thing ever. If you're sitting there and you put this together and you sit back and say, oh, this is 2 hours long. Woo, we've got to cut something. That's not going to work. Because if you got 2 hours, you got to hold my attention for 2 hours. I don't care. They weren't holding my attention. I was getting down to this. And I'm like, please just come on and get this over with. And by the time they got to the end, it could have probably been the best thing in the world. And I was like, I don't care. I'm just glad it's done because they had drugged me along so long that it felt like I was being a little bit insulted. Yeah. It just, I mean this with all the love in my heart. It didn't have the material and the writing chops to go for 2 hours.
No. And I don't mean, and obviously we don't mean this to be offensive. So if for some reason the person who made this movie is listening, this is not a discouragement to stop making movies. This is a discouragement for making 2 hour long movies when you don't have the material for it.
Yeah, this is honest feedback as a viewer. Yeah. Right? Hey, you had some kernels of good stuff here. Man, 2 hours though made me lose your spark. So you got to pick and choose a little bit.
Well, and I think that something that's important too is that when you see that 2 hour timestamp, it becomes a chore too.
It does. Absolutely.
But yeah, so I think that's my first statement on the overall thought process of this movie is that it was significantly too long. Like it is a significant detriment to the movie of how long it is. And
yeah, because when I pulled it up and saw 2 hours, my first thought was, well, this had better be good. Because I'm like, if this is 2 hours and they couldn't trim this down, they must have 2 hours of some really great shit here. So this had better be good. So the bar's already pretty high because you're telling me you got 2 hours of material here that's going to wow me. So I'm expecting that. And if you don't deliver that high level, it's like you're already 2 strikes down in this count.
Exactly. And that's the big thing too, is that like when you have that 2 hour movie, because when you think of like good 2 hour movies, I think about like movies that have legitimately changed the trajectory of film history. You know, movies like The Godfather. You know, I mean, like those are like epics that are 2-3 hour long movies, and it makes sense. But this movie this movie truly had no reason to be 2 hours long. And I think that was definitely to its detriment, because about halfway through, I was saying to myself, I still got an hour left of this. I still have an hour left of this movie. And I was like, I don't want to have that mindset, because it truly impacts your mood, and it impacts your outlook on that movie. So that would be my first thing. It was way too long. It could have been cut significantly.
I stand firm on the opinion that a horror movie is in its prime an hour and 15 to an hour and a half.
Yeah, I would agree. I think 90 minutes or less is a sweet spot for horror movies, because that is long enough to get your story and your point across, but not long enough to shoot yourself in the foot. and that's the truth. And that's what this movie did. I think this movie accidentally shot itself in the foot, and it's unfortunate. But I think that one thing too is that with this movie, one of the biggest issues as well that Dave definitely brought up was the cohesiveness. Anytime you have an anthology film, if you are going to have an overarching story, and there are some good anthology films that don't have an overarching story. You know, films like Creepshow, they don't really have an overarching story, but they do have a very interesting narrator who is showing you these little snippets, you know what I mean? So you don't necessarily always have to have that overarching story to connect all of the stories. But if you are going to do that, it needs to be very glued. It needs to be tight. It needs to be kept. It needs to be very good. And I felt like this movie lacked in that. And it's not necessarily anything negative towards the creators. It's just that if you're going to go the route of a anthology, you need to keep in mind of what you're competing with. You think of a good holiday anthology, you think of movies like Trick or Treat. You think of movies Southbound. There's all these great anthology-esque movies, Creepshow, that do so much good stuff, and you're going to now put yourself in the same ring as those people, as those movies, and you're not going to be able to hold up to what people expect from anthologies. And I think that was, again, to their detriment, that they made this an anthology film without a very cohesive story, without it being truly, truly cohesive. I think that it was a good idea, but I think that they didn't quite stick the landing. I think that's important to say, is that it was not a bad idea. It was just that it did not quite stick the landing. I think that's the best way I could put it.
Yeah, I mean, you got 6 segments here essentially, and that's a lot of segments. That's a lot to try to do, and I don't know. I just think they should have picked and choose. They should have edited it a little better. They should have thought about the overall picture as they planned this out, and I don't feel like they did. I feel like they had all these little ideas and thought, we want to do them all, so we're just going to do them all, and we're going to put them together, and that's just the way it's going to be. Instead of sitting there and being honest with themselves and saying, okay, yeah, but this one maybe doesn't work as well in the big picture. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should sit on that for the future. And I just felt like they just forced things in there when they didn't have to.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I felt like there were some parts of the game that were a little forced. Or not the game, the movie. My apologies. I don't know why I said game. Anyways, there were definitely parts of the movie that did feel a little forced, because, and I hate to point it out, because obviously I'm sure they worked hard on it, but the fucking snowman puppet part of the movie, in my opinion, it felt forced. It felt too long. It honestly felt like they were trying to like add to the movie. It felt like some of the shit they did during that segment was purposefully to run the clock. And I don't know why they would do that, but it felt like that. It just felt like a waste of time. It felt like they were intentionally just sticking random bullshit, random B-roll into this movie just to make it make sense or to make it make longer. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
because
know why they would.
Well, you had a good idea where it was going to go.
Right.
As you're watching this, you're like, okay, I see where you're going. Just get there. It's like, why? I don't know. It was too much. It was way too much. That was definitely the segment that, maybe the idea was okay, but man, the delivery was not on cue. it was off. I don't know why they tried to pad that ideal so much that they put that much time into it. They were beating a dead horse with some of this. It was just way too much. I mean, they were trying to point out how downtrodden this guy was. We got that, and they just kept pushing it, and it's like, oh.
That's what I was gonna say too. It felt like they didn't like the guy, like whoever that actor was. They were like, "Fuck this guy. Let's make him look like a complete fucking loser."
Yeah. All right. Well, like I said, that one of the biggest qualms of the movie was the length. Do I think they could have trimmed it down and saved it? I don't know about saving. Could they have trimmed it down and improved it? Yes. I think it would have felt a little stronger. At least it wouldn't felt as much of a burden to watch and to get through some of the weak parts. I still think there was some parts of the movie that were missing, even despite the length. Even if you trim some down, I still think there was a few things that were not hitting. But the length and some of what felt like filler material was definitely, to me, the biggest strike on this movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's like it felt like they were afraid to let go of any of their ideals. Like they were just going to stand their ground. And again, an experienced director knows that you can't keep everything that you envision in the story in the movie. You have to pick and choose what works best for the vision overall. And I just don't feel like they had that. They had that experience, that seasoning yet to make those choices in this.
Yeah, and I think there was one other thing I was going to add before we eventually get to like the actual rating of this. But one thing I kind of wanted to just throw in there, just in case like anybody out there was like, maybe I want to watch this movie. Still watch this movie. I still recommend that you do. I wouldn't tell you not to watch this movie. It wasn't that bad. There are still some very positive things about this movie. There are still some gems within the movie. It's just like, man, you didn't need to do what you did, but you did it anyways, and that's fine. But maybe learn from this for your next film that you do, because man, I don't know if I can sit through another 2-hour long movie like that. It's just
no.
It's hard, and there's a few parts of this movie that it kind of made me think of Cannibal Cabin. And
and
look, man, you do not want to be compared to the fucking Cannibal Cabin, the fucking baby. I swear to God.
Yeah, I mean, when you're making a movie with different segments, different, multiple stories, it is already a fine art to try to pull that off, to make it work. You have to have that overarching vision of what's going to tie this all together before you dive into that. And I felt like this kind of went backwards. They had all these separate ideals, and then they just try to say, okay, what can we do to kind of tie this together? Oh, let's have a sin to telling stories. And it didn't make it work. And these kind of movies, they don't, that's not how they work. The wraparound, the big ideal is what drives these movies, and everything else feeds into them. And it all, swirls around and circulates and leads into that finale that brings it all together within the wraparound. And this movie did not do that. It did not feel like it had that vision to pull that off. It's like they had several ideals, and they wanted to go for them all. So they just said, oh, let's do an anthology type movie and throw them all in there. And it didn't. I don't think that was as well thought out as they had hoped. So
I would agree.
All right. Well, let's rate this thing. Nightmare on 34th Street. Again, it's available digitally out there, written and directed by James Crow. Ike, I'm gonna let you rate this first. I typically go first. What are you rating Nightmare on 34th Street?
Yep. So I think with this movie, the big thing to remember is that there were still some positive things. Now, I don't think that I will rewatch this movie. So I think in my mind that automatically disqualifies it from being a 3. I think that to be a 3, you have to have some form of rewatchability. Now, I don't think I'll go as low as a 2, so I think I'm going to have to go kind of in the middle at like a 2.5 out of 5.
Yeah, I think that's kind of probably where I land too. It's definitely not a 3 for me. Like you said, there's not enough there to make me want to rewatch it. And then when you take that into account with the length, it's just, it ain't happening. I'm not rewatching this movie. There's not enough here to make me give up 2 hours to rewatch. There's some sparks there, some moments I liked enough that will probably keep it from dropping all the way to a 2. Again, I did kind of enjoy that first segment. The Krampus was pretty good. The church segment, the 12 kills, was pretty creepy. So there were some kernels there that I think that's enough to bump it up to a 2.5. But that's, I gotta say, that is the Yuletide giving nature of me right now. That is generous. They're getting a 2.5, but it's not a strong earning on their part. They're kind of getting that by the skin of their teeth, so to speak. One more mistake and they're down to a 2. And again, it is what it is. It's a Christmas horror. That's an odd realm to try to go into because there's been so much done that it's you're already taking a chance that you're going to be able to produce something original enough to hold people's attention. And I don't feel like they delivered. But again, this is it's available out there. Go give it a watch. See what you think. Make sure you have some snacks and a drink. Maybe pack a lunch because it is a long movie, like we said. But if you've watched it or if you're going to watch it, give us some feedback. What do you think? What would you rate it? What would you think of it? Which segments did you like out of this? Give us your views overall, and then break it down and tell us what you did like, what segment you did like. Now, that's the unique thing about doing a movie like this. While we didn't enjoy it overall, it did have segments within the anthology that we did like. So it breaks down. If you take away the building blocks, there are some parts we did like to the movie. So let us know what you thought. And again, like Ike said earlier, like the ad said earlier, you can do that on social media. We're on all those platforms. Just look us up. Listen to Screams. Listen to the number 2 in Screams. And let us know what you thought about it. I'm a little more optimistic. Ike, I know you've already seen this movie, and I know you're excited to do it. You're excited for me to see it. You're excited for us to discuss it. Next episode, we are reviewing It's a Wonderful Knife, which is available now on Shudder and AMC Plus. And I'm looking forward to seeing this. I have a much more optimistic view of watching this movie. I think this is I think it's going to be a little more enjoyable view. I think I know a little more what to expect. Let's put it that way. So I'm looking forward to it as our tromp through some new horror movies continue. That's on next episode. So before we get out of here, make sure you subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. And if the choice is there, give us a rating and a review. Help us with those algorithms. Help us come up as a suggested listen when people are listening to other similar podcasts. Ike, before we put a lid on this in our first week of the Yuletide season, anything you want to add?
I think the only thing I would add is I'm very excited for our next review. I think that this is probably this, without giving away anything, because I want to make sure Dave doesn't get any kind of spoilers. This movie that we're reviewing next week may or may not make its way into my top 5 for the year.
Whoa, that's saying a lot. All right, we'll see. We'll see. We're on the cusp of that. That's wild to think. It's because I haven't given a lot of thought to that, but man, we're right there where we got to narrow down our top 5 for the year, and start debating that. So I look forward to that coming up in the future. That's always fun. And I don't remember. I'll look into it. We'll talk about next week. I don't. What was our number 1 movie from last year? Do you remember off the top of your head?
It was Terrifier 2, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, probably. makes sense. I forgot about that. So there you go. But when we get to that point where we're discussing our top 5 of 2023, we'll do a very quick recap of what our top 5 of 2022 was, just for shits and giggles. But I do look forward to that. But we'll see. It's a Wonderful Knife, Ike says, is a contender for his top 5. So intriguing. We'll see what I think of it coming up next week. I haven't given a lot of thought, so we'll see. We'll see. But that is coming up as we continue with Christmas horror, and it's nice to have some new stuff out there. Last year we did primarily classic old stuff, and it's nice this year that we've got some newer things, some newer entries to watch and review. So I'm looking forward to that. So, but that is next episode. Until then, whatever you do and wherever you go, be good, be safe, and always have many pleasant nightmares.